This is the Oakwyn Podcast, featuring Morgan Brown and Michael Yu.
For the greater ecosystem, they've been extremely warm and welcoming, and very engaging. And that includes other real estate boards and other associations and other stakeholders like our regulator and the federal folks. That doesn't mean it's all been easy,
Right.
You know. So my second or third day in the job, I got a long, lengthy letter, very heartfelt, well-meaning, but the general tone of it was, "How dare you? And you're not from this industry. You're not even from this province. How can you think you can do this job?"
Right.
And it was disappointing to receive that, but I understand where that person was coming from.
Sorry for sending that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I've gotten over it, Michael. But I reached out to I pride myself on trying to be authentically transparent on everything, and so I reached out to the person, and it was during one of the COVID lockdowns when I started. And so we did a Zoom call, and I sort of said, "Look, I'm not coming saying I have the answers. I'm on this journey together, but I've seen some things, and I think I can help us and such." And I'm proud of the relationship that I've been able to professional relationship I've been able to develop with this person. But there's been some naysayers.
Yeah,
you know, it's a conservative industry with a lot of internal churn, and like I said, a lot of gatekeeping. You know, and I don't think the gatekeeping's healthy.
What kind of gatekeeping?
We don't do things that way. Or you don't need to know.
Yeah.
Or why are you asking so many questions? Old conventions
that have never been questioned. And
this is the way we do it. Yeah. Right. And then, you know, and some of them are really good reasons, and it kind of makes sense. Or some of it is, even this week, you know, someone was asking me, said, if I've ever been a realtor, if I've ever sold a house. Well, I've sold several homes, but I've never been a realtor. But the person I was speaking to has never managed, 400 employees and done international deals.
Right.
Like, we all bring different things to the table.
Right.
And so I try to really make an effort to be empathetic on these folks. And change is scary, right? And I always think change is scary when you don't know what it means for you. If I told you tomorrow night you're going to win the Super Bowl lottery, that's a change you would probably embrace.
Yeah.
Because you can envision what that means for you. But if you don't know, or if it just feels like you're changing things and I don't get it, then people can react poorly.
Absolutely.
The human condition. Some people love it, a lot of people don't.
Right.
And but change is usually healthy, and that's how you refresh and get stronger and better. That's how companies evolve.
Right.
If you're not changing and growing, you're dying.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment 100%. And sometimes having the dissenters or the naysayers, they're so fundamental to helping you to see things in a different perspective and from a different light. And actually, in our organization, one of the people that we have a member in our organization that I call on a regular basis, like, what's wrong with our company?
Oh yeah.
And you want to kind of keep those individuals close because they're going to see it from a different light. They're going to be able to triangulate your position a little bit better, see things from a different angle and a perspective. So that's interesting. So a lot of change happening right now, and a big change that's kind of all on Facebook is the rebrand.
Yes.
From Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, which is, as Jeff alluded to, has been in place for the 50 plus years. Now we've moved to the Greater Vancouver Realtors.
Yes.
So that how was that decision-making process? Like, take us through the journey there?
Sure. Yeah. So the maybe I'll rewind the clock a little bit.
Yes, please.
So the original sort of prototype of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver started in 1888, and was called like the Vancouver Real Estate Board. And only lasted for about a year or so, then kind of collapsed under its own weight. The entity that we know now started in 1919 and actually had a name, a very good name. It was the Vancouver Real Estate Exchange, which I thought, considering it was from 100 years ago.
Right.
Now, of course, you think it's the post-World War I crowd and the rise of the stock markets and things like that. That's probably how they picked it. Those people are long gone. But there was
Vancouver Real Estate Exchange. Vancouver Real Estate Exchange.
Yeah, that was the original name of the company. And then went over the course of the next several decades, went through a number of different names, landing on the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver around 1970.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the names were versions of that.
Mm-hmm.
There's a couple different elements, and I think it's wise to disconnect them. So, firstly, our legal name staying the same. We're still the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver is our legal name. That's our operating, our legal title.
Okay.
We have about 20,000, 25,000 contracts out there.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make sense to go back and try to amend those.
Put addendums to 20,000
come on, right?
subcontracts. Yeah,
yeah, it makes no sense. Makes no sense. And
it's
most
a DBA.
It's a DBA. It's doing business as, operating as, is Greater Vancouver Realtors. Now, there's a couple different elements on it, and I'm going to do a little plug for the GVR podcast, which will come out in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So invite your listeners to subscribe to that, and I'm going to tell them to subscribe to listen to this podcast. But there's a couple of things. The Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, as a name, is a mouthful,
right?
And as an acronym, REBGV does not roll off the tongue. There's a lot of E sounds in a row.
Music guy.
yeah. Maybe there's something to that. I mean, you're the first one to say that to me, but maybe you're onto something. And it was prone to multiple variations. Even quite recently, I was in a somewhat formal setting, and someone well-meaning, but they got her name totally wrong. It was like the Vancouver Board of Greater Real Estate or something like that, right? It was just a mishmash because it was hard to remember, it was hard to articulate, and it was very inconsistent, even internally. REBGV, REBGV, the board, which is also confusing because we have a board of directors, and then Vancouver, and all those different elements. And there's another trick too, because we represent 23 communities from Whistler to Coquitlam and everything in between. So that's also an issue that we want to be mindful. We had to be mindful of. Layering in all the different variations of it. It was not the word board doesn't always have positive connotations. If you're going to present in front of the school board or the medical board, those are usually not happy times. There's usually something that's happened that's causing that to happen and creates a connotation. And there's confusion and a lack of clarity about who we represented and what we did. Even at member meetings, people would query me about different things that the regulator handles.
Yes, absolutely.
Right,
and there was always a confusion between the Real Estate Council, the BCFSA, and
spot on, exactly right,
and the board. Yeah,
it was very confusing stuff. So we wanted to take a look at ways to make it clear who we represent, including when we do charitable and good things. Hey, this is on behalf of Greater Vancouver Realtors. As simple as that stuff.
Yes.
But even to help provide extra clarity about what we do. Of course, we still do education. We still do professional standards and arbitration around disputes and things like that. We still do all those things. That's part of our feature set, along with the MLS that we operate. But the word board in our sort of trade name was probably not helpful. And it being a mouthful was not good. So we looked at different versions in terms of the name. And you could pick like just a one-word thing, like Ignite or whatever. And but those can be problematic too, right? Because it can sound too trendy, or it could be too of a moment, right? And all of a sudden it's 2030. It's like, why did you call yourselves that? That's weird, And it's difficult to have something and have some legs around it. And it is a conservative industry. We want to be very specific about who we represented and all the rest of it. So who do we represent? Greater Vancouver Realtors.
Right.
That's kind of how we land on that. And GVR is easy to say. It's very similar to YVR. And there's kind of a flow to it. And I think it gives flexibility for future state for different uses of it.
Right.
The most of the feedback I've received that's not been positive has really been around the logo.
Right.
Not so much the name. Now, overall, the feedback's running about 6-1 for the positive. People happy about the change, both in terms of logo and the name, as opposed to negative.
Or did we poll that? Or
No, I'm just keeping track.
Okay.
Right? Yeah.
Sounds
We
good.
didn't do the poll in advance because I think on things like this,
Right.
mob rule.
Yeah, because a lot of people that was a complaint of a lot of the membership.
Yeah.
If you go to our Facebook group page, it seems like a mutiny is taking place over there. So there's a little bit of the elephant in the room now.
Yeah. Hey, no problem. I embrace it, and I'm glad we're having a dialogue about it.
What do you say to those members?
We had a process that we walked through. I'll get to the logo itself in a moment.
Okay.
But we did have a process that we followed. So we did a lot of polling and testing, both in terms with members and the general public.
Okay.
About the old name.
Right.
And a lot of the feedback was, we don't even know who you are. How does this work? Are you part of the government? We're not. But those types of things were coming out loud and clear around the name. I kind of think, frankly, for a lot of those types of things, mob rule does not work.
Absolutely, yeah.
Just getting in a hockey arena of 15,000 people and saying, "What name do you want?"
Yeah.
That's not leadership.
Yeah, we've had a lot of riots here too.
Yeah. And the Canucks are looking good this year.
They are looking so good. So I'm getting geared up for a riot.
I'm getting bars from our windows. This is I have to say, this is probably the best Canucks team I've ever seen. As a sidebar, even though they won President's trophies, and the West Coast Express era was great. But when I look at top to bottom, this is probably the deepest.
I would. This isn't a hockey podcast, but I would agree with you. Yeah.
They're looking good. Now, anything can happen.
Yeah.
Boston had the best regular season in history last year and was out in the first round.
Right.
So let's not get. I'm a lifelong Leafs fan. So
you shouldn't say that here.
The one thing I've learned, there's a lot of Torontonians. I'm one of them. A lot of Torontonians in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah.
And I've always said over and over again, when I die, I want the Leafs to be my pallbearers, so they can let me down one last time. Now, so back to the name. I think the mob rules idea of just having a bunch of people vote on it is not leadership.
Right.
We have to show leadership and do it. So, in order to have us succeed in this, we had a very disciplined process, and we brought in outside experts, Wasserman, a well-known, highly regarded marketing and advertising agency. With a large Vancouver presence.
Sure.
And we worked with Wasserman, and they helped us refine it. They helped us do a lot of the testing. We worked with the Moselle group around the actual surveys, like, hey, what does this mean to you? All that type of stuff. And it was pretty clear we had changing the name was an opportunity to reposition the organization. Concurrent with that, and then so as part of that, senior management, myself included, worked with Wassermans and our internal marketing people. And we also took the board of directors through the journey around, okay, we're starting to look at some different options around names and logos, and went through the process around that. And as a reminder, I know everyone knows this, but as a reminder, the board is elected. We have a board of 14, 11 are elected, 3 are appointed public directors. They're non-realtors, bringing business experience and different things to it. So there was a thorough vetting process around that, and what we ended up landing on Greater Vancouver Realtors as an operating as name, and then the logo itself. So the old logo, which had been around,
Skyline,
the skyline of the city, which had been around for decades. There was a version in the late '60s, and it got updated in the mid '80s. It was the skyline, included Canada Place and a whole bunch of stuff. All buildings that we have nothing to do with.
Right.
All buildings that we don't own, control, or the only connection we have to them is that they are within the catchment of the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver. Nothing bad would ever happen. But it's not usually good practice to have something in your logo on something that you don't own or don't control.
Right.
What if something horrible came out? And then all of a sudden, I'm explaining to global news, well, we have nothing to do with this place.
Right.
Despite the horrible stuff happening in the basement or whatever it is. It seems like an unnecessary risk for the organization to take that. You layer on that the logo itself was quite complex. With a lot of little details.
You can't do iconography.
Iconography was almost impossible.
Right.
And in the digital space, it did not translate well. And when you look at the alphabet soup of often if you go to a conference or if you're at a big digital event, they'll have all the logos of sponsors or participants or here's who's here, that type of thing. it just sort of looked like a blob from a government agency or something.
Right.
It was hard to figure out even what the hell it was, unless it was a big size. And you could kind of tell it was a city. You couldn't really tell it was Vancouver, to be honest.
Right.
Coincidentally, I presented to a number of CEOs last week on a sort of topic around innovation and some work we're doing. And at the end, sort of the one of the teaser parts was like, "Oh, here's our new logo. Here's the old logo. Here's our new logo." And the feedback I got from a couple of them around the old logo was it meant with fun, but they basically said it looks like it's a mining company from Britain in the 1870s.
Wow.
And I thought that's actually brilliant because that's kind of she kind of called it. That's exactly it. And so we wanted to do something that was simpler, easier to replicate, more memorable. Okay, if I put you on the spot, Michael, and say, okay, name 3 or 4 brands without the words that mean something to you. You're going to say Apple, Nike. There's going to be a handful. There's not a lot.
Oakwyn.
Oakwyn, of course. The Oakwyn O. I'm surprised that wasn't first in the chamber, but so if you want to have something like that, you have a simple. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. Yeah. Guess what? If you don't tell your story, people won't know it.
Right.
So Oakwyn's smart to tell the story and have a brand around that. So we wanted to have something that was simple and representative, easy to reproduce, memorable, and all the rest of it. So the logo itself is essentially a little house with the sun over it. We live on the West Coast. I think most people are familiar with that. And a tall building to represent either condo / like strata and commercial.
Right.
And you can also make the argument that the little dot is data and information. That's how data is often represented in programming. I think there's a simplicity to it and a repetition to it that's where it would be quite memorable. When I'm starting to see the first merch come out, like we have a toque and things like that.
Nice.
Like, okay, I like this. It's going to be memorable, it's distinctive, and it's different. A lot of the feedback has been around, well, why these colors? Yeah, why the green? Why the puke green or the Kermit the Frog green and all that type of stuff? And a lot of folks have been suggesting, hey, why don't you do blue? Keep in mind, it's about 6 to 1 people saying they love it. Kudos for doing it. But for the naysayers, they said, well, why don't you do blue and such like that? Well, during our process, when we started playing around different options, blue and different things were part of the mix. And when we did the logo soup, it just blended in with everyone else.
Right.
A shocking number of companies use blue. 60 to 70% use blue. In organized real estate, it's probably around 80%. And so blues and reds are quite dominant. Greens are rarer. And we are on the West Coast. The dark green has been a historical color for the organization for almost 100 years. And is quite representative of British Columbia and all the rest of it. The brighter green is really meant to be evocative of growth. New shoots of trees, deciduous trees are bright green. That's generally where the color came from. And we played around with different versions of it. And we want to have something that popped a bit and would be more memorable than just sort of 2 shades of dark green.
Right.
And so we ended up with this. One of the notes I was hearkened with a couple of nights ago was someone wrote me a note and said, I hated it at first, but I'm learning to like it. And it's only been public knowledge for about 8 days.
Right.
So as the news cycle continues and people get more familiar with it, I'm quite confident that it'll be embraced, it'll be recognized for what it is, and we can sort of proudly move on.
Right. So the process that you took, because I think that there was a bit of skepticism about like how much did this cost us? So that process and that was undertaken was obviously pretty substantial. Was there like a committee, a rebranding committee? Was that done just with the directors and yourself? Like how was that look? Yep. How did that look like?
So yes, so there's internal force staff working on it, including myself.
Yep.
And the board of directors and some other members at large were used as testing ground. And then of course we use Wasserman and other experts on the outside, right? They're experts in this space and they can be able to do it. We spend effort and money and resources on these types of things all the time. So it's hard to reverse engineer and say, how much did that logo cost? Because we spend in any given year around $150,000 around doing different member surveys, analytics around the surveys, different test products, different things. And this time, for this aspect, we made a strategic decision okay, let's look at the name and the logo. We're paying the board regardless. We're paying the staff regardless. But they're looking at logos now. And so it's sort of baked into the cost of the operation. And then the budget itself is part of our omnibus budget for all the things that we do, including refresh of the medallion awards or different things around our communications or making our website accessible for people who are vision impaired. That costs money too.
Right.
But that's the right thing to do. So we did it, right? And so it's all combined into those elements. And then I present a budget to the board of directors, which they have the right to approve it or reject it. They approved it, of course. And we sort of moved it from there. From my perspective, we got tremendous value from it. I have to admit, I was pleasantly surprised when CBC Radio had mentioned our name change on one of their stories.
Right.
And that was good publicity for us. That's hard to measure and hard to put a dollar amount on it.
Right.
But we're not in the public foray very often. And so this is the way to do
for
it.
Something that's generally positive.
A positive thing. Yeah, some people may not like it.
Yeah.
And I know taste is challenged. Everyone's got different tastes. There's some things that people and companies do that I don't like. Right. But I like this. I love
Jeff,
the
I have to say, I have to really commend you because that's a very bold move to do in the first 2 years of a tenure as CEO of a company to rebrand something that generally no one saw as an issue, to really make that change. So, bold leadership, I think, is something that's not easy to kind of do, especially when you've had a CEO that has been a part of the previous CEO that has been a part of the industry for, since he was 18 years old. And
Well, no, thank you for that. And I take it as a compliment. A couple of things I was reminded of last weekend at this time. There's an old adage, fortune favors the bold. And I do believe that. I think companies that lean in and look to change things are more successful. And sometimes if you're not taking the odd lump, you're not trying hard enough.
Right.
But the other thing that I was mindful of, I'll be honest, Michael, was the old saying, success has 1,000 parents and defeats an orphan. And it was amazing how some people felt quite comfortable criticizing it without proffering any sort of alternative view of it.
Right.
And I thought, okay, all right, message received, I got it. But I don't, I think I was brought in to bring innovation and energy and try to reimagine the organization. We have a new strategic plan, and our vision is real estate reimagined. And this is one element of it, but in the grand scheme of things, the brand, the name and the logo are just one element of it. The brand is really the relationship and the trust, and it's built over time. We're going to continue to build that, but we also want to do different things around technology and professionalism. I've been speaking across the country around different things we can do on that front. Yeah, and I think there's huge opportunities for GVR to show leadership.
Right, and innovation.
And innovation and to help with these things. And not just talk about it, but actually do it.
Right.
I like getting things done.
Yeah, you can be a passenger, you can be a driver, right? So we want to take an active participation in these things, especially because, we're a Canadian or even a global leader in real estate in Vancouver. I think we serve one of the most desirable marketplaces in the world.
Without a doubt.
And so, I think we don't want to take a passive approach or reactive approach. I think that's really key. So I'm really curious, Jeff, and this is because I'm a little bit of a nerd. Do you have any leaders that you admire or any kind of, that you kind of are like, this is who I'd model my leadership style with?
You know what? That's a great question. I tend to look at a very a bit of a hybrid, and my university degree, my major was history with so I'm often drawn to historical figures.
Right.
and everything from from Hannibal and the idea of being bold and thinking differently.
Right.
Taking elephants across the Alps was not something everyone was thinking about, right? And to put a finer point on it, when I look at current and modern leaders, specifically business leaders that kind of jump out, I don't agree with everything that they all do, but there's parts of it that I'm quite impressed with. I love Steve Jobs' drive, his relentless thing to just keep innovating and not accept alternatives.
He didn't take polls.
He didn't take. He wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't.
He would never take a poll.
Yeah,
they don't know what they want until I serve it to them.
Yeah, and there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
right. The Conrad Hilton had a famous quote. He said, "Why don't you?" They said, "Why don't you talk to your customers?" He said, "If I talk to my customers, they say they want bigger hotel rooms for free, and I'm not doing that."
Right.
And I thought, yeah, that's kind of interesting, right? And Henry Ford, any color you want, as long as it's black, all that type of stuff. So I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned around that, and even even more contemporary, like Elon Musk, I think has a lot of drive. There's things about that drive me crazy. There's things he does. I go, oh, what the heck? But there's other things when I look at it, I think, okay, that's genius. Right. And, I am a head and heart person. I think if someone's smart and willing to work hard, they can accomplish a huge amount. And the really successful leaders are able to do those types of things. The Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Jack Welch, for that matter. I think I've got a softer, gentler personality than people like that. I'm not comparing myself to them at all. But when I look at their body of work, there's some themes that come through. Ignore the criticisms. Drive through, try to look forward as much as possible. Don't look backwards as much. So I try to model myself that way. A lot of folks struggle with that, and they get nervous or they get comfortable. I will not be comfortable. I'll be kind of relentless. It's probably a weakness on my part, but I think I'm evolving it into a strength. I'm very hard on myself. Very hard on myself. And if I do something, I always imagine how I could have done it better. And I'm more determined the next time to try to do it better. And that sort of relentless pursuit of perfection is really what drives me. I'm a huge believer in being transparent and very communicative with staff and members. And, here's what we're working on. Last year at the AGM, I said, we're looking at the name and the logo. I was quite open and upfront about it.
Right.
And, even sort of, laid out the reasons why and sort of articulated the case. And I will consistently follow up and do what I say, and I'll say what I'll do. And I think that's what I think I can bring to GVR. And I'm trying my best, but I'm still human. I never said I was perfect. And I'm going to try my best and work on it. You mentioned earlier about driving the bus, and I learned a long time ago when I was a young executive how important it was to get the right people on the bus.
Right. Yeah.
And I saw huge value in having the right ones on the bus, and they're engaged and they help and all the rest of it. I was too arrogant and inexperienced to realize the impact of the wrong people on the bus.
Right.
So the wrong people can distract the bus driver or distract the other folks on the bus and be very disruptive and unhelpful. And for too long, I would always think, oh, I'll talk them into it. They'll see the vision. They'll get it and stuff. Some people just don't. And I'm not talking about anybody specific. I'm just talking in general about running a company and having customers.
Right.
Some member, like our members are our members and our owners. I get it. But they're also customers. We're like a credit union, right? They do business with us, but they also own a non-share capital corporation. But I've come to learn and appreciate former leaders who have found ways to deal with people who were maybe the wrong passenger on the wrong bus. Doesn't mean they're bad people.
Right.
It just means they're probably not on the right bus.
Did you butt heads with in a case when you got into the CEO position where you had to tell someone to get off the bus?
I was given a fortunate gift that a number of folks had left right around the time before I started. I like to think it wasn't because of me, but the former CEO who'd been there for a long time left. He and I overlapped for a few weeks.
Right.
What
What were his parting words to you? Like, kind of like, they always have that day where the new president, like in the US, the new president hangs out for like a morning.
Yeah.
And they have coffee, and then like Obama and Trump were just like,
I'm fascinated. The Trump one is kind of wild, right?
I don't want to listen to you.
Exactly right. So I'll answer that question for sure. I'm always fascinated by the somewhat infamous letters that the presidents leave for the next letter.
Absolutely,
right?
Yeah.
I'm obsessed with these things,
right?
And I'm also obsessed with some very powerful sort of communications that are done very simply, right? So when during World War II, when Germany declared war on the United States, Roosevelt sent a telegram to Churchill, and all it said was, "We're on our way." I thought, isn't that interesting? Right? It said so much in just a few words. And at the end of World War II, when Berlin finally fell and there was a final little parts, Eisenhower's note back to Roosevelt was, "The objectives of the mission have been completed." It just ended the largest conflict in human history in Europe. And so I love the simplicity of all that. So when Brad was leaving, it was during COVID, and we just had what was new for me, an atmospheric river. And it wiped out the Coquihalla Highway, and he was stuck at his cottage, basically.
Sure.
So we didn't meet in person until about 2 months later, when the way was figured out, and he made his way back down to the city. So we didn't have one of those dramatic, "Here's the keys, don't crash the bus, you're the person" type moment. And he didn't leave me a letter because he had been working from home and that type of thing. But he wished me well. And we had a phone call at the right towards the end of his time. He wished me well, and one thing that was interesting, before I'd started, he and I were doing like sort of orientation calls, and so we would talk for like an hour every Wednesday. I was still back east, and we would he would update me on different things that were going on. And I asked, one of my favorite questions, is, if you had a magic wand, what would you do?
Right.
And he said, "Well, you didn't really have an answer in the chamber." And then, but later, to Brad's full credit, he came back and he said, "You know what?" And he said, "I've given that a lot of thought since you've asked it." And he said, if he had a magic wand, he would have dealt with some of the structural issues within the organization and with the MLS faster. I thought, number one, that's very brave and open, which I really appreciated. I've got a lot of respect for that. And it was good insight because he was right. Those are areas that we need to evolve. To your earlier question about butting heads or those types of things. So Brad left at the end of 2021. So did the CIO, who is Mike Peterson, who's a fantastic CEO, been there for a long time. But he left. The CFO was off on medical leave at the time, and the HR person had left, and about a year earlier or a year or two earlier, the member experience person passed away suddenly. So the leadership team was kind of there for me to build on my own, which is a huge opportunity, a massive opportunity for me, but also meant a lot of. I was in the deep end fast because I was CEO, but I was also kind of, not literally, but kind of acting CIO, acting CFO.
CFO.
I was doing a lot of frontline work and housekeeping type stuff that took a huge curve at the beginning. But I've been very proud of the management team, and the staff have been very engaging and welcoming to me, and I feel like we've built a strong team, and we filled out those roles now, of course, obviously. And we're moving to get in order. The way I look at it, especially for an institution as high profile as the Greater Vancouver Realtors, it's not well known to the public. We know that, but it is well known with the membership and has a key role with the members. Like it's a powerful enabler. Like the MLS is a key tool of how people make their money and continuing
it's
education.
The hockey stick.
It's a hockey stick, baby. Yeah. So it's a high-profile organization within the ecosystem. And within British Columbia, we have about 15,000 members. There's about 26,000 realtors in the province. So we're more than half, or with this one board, we're 3 times the size of the next largest board in the province. The way I look at it, we've worked hard to sort of modernize our technology, get the right people on the team, and get the things organized for the journey. And it's like an Airbus A380. Now we're like a giant jet that's kind of pulled onto the runway. And now 2024 is a period where we're throttling down, and this thing's starting to thunder down the runway. And the name change, the new logo is part of it. But new technology, new tools are coming in the coming months. That'll be part of it. The certification elements and discussions around professionalism will be part of it. And I can feel the momentum and the increased strength of the organization.
Do you see those certifications restricting members from doing certain things, or only enhancing?
Enhancing.
Okay. So we won't have a position where you can only do land assemblies if you get your designation for land assembly.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No, it's just meant to be an enhancement in a way to
to demonstrate value and education.
I've gone down a learning path on this, and I've taken these courses. I'm comfortable with it, and they can market it, all that type of stuff, but it doesn't preclude anyone. And generally the Canadian system is, if you have a license, you can do any type of real estate. Generally,
yes.
That's not going to change, and we don't issue the licenses. There's a regulator that does that. But I think there's an opportunity to do that to help recognize people who have that type of expertise, and it adds a way to add value,
right?
And frankly, add stickiness to their relationship with their trade association, GVR.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned as a future challenge is improving the UI of the Paragon system, of the MLS system. So, what would be the big rocks there? Like, what would be the big kind of speed bumps or obstacles?
Obstacles to executing improvements, or what types of things you want to fix?
What types of things that we want fixed?
Make it more mobile friendly.
Mobile friendly? Okay.
Yeah. Easier to use and adjust things. It's large and cumbersome. We want to have ways to have faster ways to pull data and package different things. And we're also working on different tools, an AI tool to help people write the descriptions.
Okay.
And then with the series of prompts that would be in there through a series of clicks.
So standardization of the write-ups.
Yeah. We're not, there's a Real Estate Standards Organization, RESO. We're members of that. We're not RESO certified yet, but we're working very quickly to get to that level. But using an AI tool to help realtors do that, I think it'll improve the efficiency and take away a lot of the sort of stress points, to be honest, Michael, about how we want to do this. There's 4 or 5 main streams around that.
Right.
And the end product, I've seen the demos of it and had the walkthrough. It's very slick. It's very intuitive.
And it's still with the same provider, Paragon?
Yeah, it's still with Paragon. It's Paragon Connect. And we're working closely with their engineers around ways to do it. We do not have engineers. We're a small company, so we have to rely on vendors to be able to do this.
Right.
And we're looking for other tools that we can add onto it to mostly around management of documents and identification and different things like that to make life easier. They're not Paragon related, but they're part of that suite of services. The things to help prove who you're talking to is who they are. Things like that.
Any thoughts about it, like incorporating? And I know there is a CRM system in Paragon, but
yeah, I think there's opportunities there.
Very low use rate. Yeah,
it's barely used, and because it's not great. And so that is one of the other features is around that, and including different ways around how things are communicated. Showing time. There's a role for it. But I think that there's other things that can be done that can be simpler and easier to do, and including helping keep track of different things such as offers and the status of different things. Some brokerages have robust back-end systems that do a lot of this. Other ones do not. And I think there's different elements of how those types of things work. Long term, I think the industry will evolve towards a deal room type model. Where the sort of, commercial kind of does this already. Okay. But mergers and acquisitions activities for like when companies buy and sell each other.
They sign an NDA.
They sign an NDA and they set up a deal room. A data room. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think residential real estate will end up in that type of spot. And the seller maybe doesn't see all the information, but they know there's been proof of income. Right. They know that there's been verification of assets, and identification who the person is.
Yeah, it provides a transparency.
Transparency, more trust in the system, all that type of stuff. they don't need and shouldn't be able to see that other information, but they know it's there. They have the green check mark.
Right.
And I think there's opportunities to do that. And I think that'll streamline and increase public confidence and make the realtors' lives easier. And by extension, make the managing broker's life easier.
Right.
And then ultimately, I think what we could do is, you know how you get when you get on a plane and you answer a bunch of questions. I don't have any aerosols. I don't have any weapons. You know, 6 green check marks. Here's your boarding pass. I think we can build a deal room type setup using the MLS and these other tools that you and I were just chatting about. Oh, here's these 12 things. The managing broker know everything's been done. This is a good deal. Like a good deal, not in terms of economics, but a good deal in terms of quality and ethics and professionalism and verification, all those types of things. And ultimately, it could be a stat package, a statistics package that we can feed to the regulator so that they can feel comfortable.
Right.
You know, the banks saw the appraisal or the appraisal was done independently, all that stuff. That's kind of the future vision.
Right.
We're a little ways away from that, but I can see that evolving.
This is all very exciting things that are coming, coming into play, Jeff. And we're just so thankful to have you on the podcast here. And time has flown by.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. And it's been really wonderful. And I'm very excited to work closely with you starting in April.
Yes. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. I've been elected as a director for the Greater Vancouver Realtors, GVR. So I'm excited to work alongside of Jeff to see a lot of these things into fruition and to provide our insights and work closely with you, Jeff. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah. But on a final closing note, anything that you'd like to kind of say or communicate to the members of Oakwyn, but also just we have a lot of agents that are outside of Oakwyn that are listening. I don't know why you're not with us, but yeah,
I'll let you do the recruitment. Well, certainly to all the realtors, Oakwyn and otherwise. I love the industry and I love what you do and value it tremendously. I think we're on a journey together. We're going to do something amazing. I want you to know that you can count on my support, and I'm going to count on yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for being part of the Oakwyn podcast. We really appreciate it. And that was with Jeff King, the CEO of Greater Vancouver Realtors. Thank you so much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, do us a big favor. Rate us 5 out of 5 on the podcast platform you're listening to it, and write a review and include Jeff. Like, Jeff was awesome. And I feel like I could have talked to Jeff for like 5 hours. But we just brushed. So we'll ask Jeff to come back. That'll be fantastic. Also, if you're interested in learning more about Oakwyn and you're curious about Oakwyn and what we do different, feel free to go to our website at oakwyn.com/join. Type into the message box Jeff King 2024 or Elevate 2024, and you'll get a free piece of mystery swag when you come and visit one of our offices. Okay, till next time, thank you so much for listening, guys. Bye.